Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to MtGO Traders. My name is Taryn. Let's go over the Dominaria set review for Black. So I've got my black shirt on, I've got my dark demeanor above me. Let's go over the black cards right now. Starting with Blessing of Bells and Lock. This is a 1 black mana instant. Target creature gets +2/+1 until end of turn. If it's legendary, it also gains lifelink until end of turn. So there are quite a few legendary creatures in the format right now, especially in Draft and Sealed for Dominaria. I think Blessing here is quite good as a combat trick by itself, just being a +2/+1, but also getting lifelink with that. That's ridiculous. I like this a lot, especially being a common in a Draft and Sealed. Again, I don't think this will see any kind of standard play, but for Draft and Sealed, it's a decent trick. Moving on here, we have Cabal Evangel? Again, bear with me as I try to pronounce all these words. It's a 2-mana 2/2 human cleric. It's a bear. It's all right. You're going to use this as, you know, like the last 14th or 15th pick in a Draft and Sealed pool. You're not going to use this at all in standard. Moving up here, we have Cabal Paladin, a 4-mana 4/2 human knight. It's a common as well. Whenever you cast a historic spell, Cabal Paladin deals 2 damage to each opponent. This is super interesting. I feel like there's probably going to be some weird tabletop or kitchen table deck built around this in standard. For Draft and Sealed, this is just a 4-mana 4/2, and that's kind of bad because of the toughness here. If it was a 4-mana 4/3, I would feel better about it, but being a 4/2 is just okay, as long as you can actually get a lot of, triggers off of casting Historics. Historics are obviously artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. Moving up here, we have Caligo Skin Witch. This is a 2-mana 1/3 human wizard with a kicker for 4. When the Caligo Skin Witch enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, each opponent discards 2 cards. I like that it's a 2-mana 1/3. That's great there, so it's going to be kind of a mid to low pick in Draft and Seal. The kicker here is if we pay 6 mana instead of 2, we actually get to have our opponent discard 2 cards for a 1/3. That's a little bit better, but again, paying 6 mana is a lot. So I do like this being like a mid to low pick for us in Draft and Sealed. And if we have the mana, in the mid to late game, we'll just cast the 6. Moving up from here, though, we have Cast Down, a 2-mana instant. Destroy target non-legendary creature. This is like about as close as you can get to like almost a Doomblade kind of scenario. I really like this card a lot. This is really good for Draft and Sealed. This card might actually even see standard play. Non-legendary is a lot of stuff. That includes cards like Glorybringer, Torrential Gearhulk, things like that. I think this is a really good card. I feel like it's probably going to see a lot of play in Standard and Brawl, and maybe, I don't know, like maybe outside of that, maybe. I don't really know. I think this card is super good. Fantastic removal in Draft and Sealed, and really good removal in Standard. Moving on here, we have Chainer's Torment, our first saga of the Black bunch here. It's a black 4-mana enchantment saga. Chapter 1 and 2 is Chainer's Torment deals 2 damage to each opponent. You gain 2 life. That's pretty decent there. Chapter 3 is create an XX black nightmare horror creature token where X is half your life total rounded up. It deals X damage to you. This is interesting. This is also an uncommon as well, so you're probably going to see it quite a bit, or not as much rather, in Draft and Sealed. I'm not so sure about this card like from the onset. I think if you can give the the Nightmare Creature token maybe lifelink, that would be a lot better, because it does help hopefully give you the ability to kind of gain some of that life back. Again, anything where it kind of halves your life, I'm really kind of leery about that, especially in Draft and Sealed where it's such a numbers game, such a quick meta game. I do think this card is interesting, and I do think Chapter 1 and 2 is actually quite good for just 4 mana. Being able to lose 4 life and gain 4 life, that's pretty decent over 2 turns. And once it hits turn 3 here, we have the ability to make, maybe a 10/10 or a 7/7 creature. I think that's okay. But of course, if that gets bounced or killed, then you're down 7 life. So you do want to definitely kind of play this card very carefully. Moving on here, we have Dark Bargain, a 4-mana instant. Look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put 2 of them into your hand and the other one into your graveyard. Dark Bargain deals 2 damage to you. This card is very good for a common. I think this card is going to be a high pick for us in Draft and Sealed. I don't think it'll see any kind of standard play for the 4 mana. If it was 3 mana, this card would be insane. But being able to pay 4 mana and pick 2 cards off the top 3 and just chunk another one, basically like a land or something you don't really want, I think this card is very good in Draft and Sealed, especially for a common for sure. Moving on, we have Deathbloom Thalia. This is a 3-mana 3/2 fungus, a fungus among us. When Deathbloom Thalia dies, create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. So there is that Golgari Saproling creature token deck kind of going around right now. Those will probably be part of it. It's also a common as well, but a 3 mana 3/2 is okay. A 3 mana 3/2 that creates a 1/1 after it dies, that's even better. I think this is going to be like a mid-tier pick for us in draft and sealed. Of course, in standard, not going to see any kind of play whatsoever. Moving on, we have Demonic Vigor, a 1 black mana aura. Enchant creature. Enchanted creature is +1/+1. When enchanted creature dies, return that card to its owner's hand. I love this card as a common. This card is so good in draft and sealed. It's basically supernatural stamina, but +1/+1. Also, does that guy look like Bam Margera? I don't know if you guys can see that. It just looks kind of like a balding Bam Margera or something like that, like from Viva La Bam. Random. Anyway, this card is really good for draft and sealed. This card probably won't see any kind of play in standard unless there's some weird, like maybe a blue-black aura deck going around. Regardless, I think this card is really good in the limited environment. Moving on here, we have Demon Lord, Bells and Lock. This is a 6 mana 6/6 legendary creature, Elder Demon, with flying and trample. And when it enters the battlefield, exile cards from the top of your library until you exile a non-land card. Then put that card into your hand. If the card's converted mana cost is 4 or greater, repeat this process. Demon Lord, Bells and Lock deals 1 damage to you for each card put into your hand this way. So this card is really interesting. I think there might be a weird, like, kind of awkward, like standard, like kind of combo around this maybe. For draft and seal, this card is basically your big bomb if you get into it as your rare. Might want to be pushing you towards black if you're getting into it in draft. For sure in sealed, if you open this up, this is going to be a great card for you. I think this is a really fun card for brawl as well. And I think in standard, this card is just going to be okay. A 6 mana 6/6 flying trampler is decent. The trample is what kind of like throws me off a little bit. I wish it had trample and lifelink, but at the same time, I think this card is decent either way. Moving on here, we have Divest, a 1 black mana sorcery. Target opponent reveals, or target player rather, reveals their hand. You choose an artifact or creature card from it. That player discards that card. So this is basically as close as you can get to Harsh Scrutiny without the Scry ability. I like this card a lot, especially for maybe a modern sideboard or even a standard sideboard if we're going up against a lot of like artifacts in the actual game meta right now. In draft and seal, this card is just okay, hopefully discarding a creature card or an artifact they don't like or we don't like from their hand. I think this card is decent. Being a common as well, you're probably going to see multiples of them in the draft pool or sealed pool as well too. It's not as good as Duress. I think Duress is better than this card, but I think this card is kind of on the same like wavelength as like a Harsh Scrutiny, but of course Harsh Scrutiny has that Scry ability, so I think being able to grab artifacts just gives it a little bit more longevity and flexibility. Moving up here, we have Dread Shade. This is a 3 black mana, straight black mana, 3/3 Shade. You can pay 1 black. Dread Shade gets +1/+1 until end of turn. This card is ridiculously powerful, and if you pull this in your draft pool, you basically want to try and go black if you can, because a 3-drop 3/3 that has fire breathing for just, you know, +1/+1, it's not even +1/+1, oh, it's +1/+1. This is very, very good. I think it's very powerful. In draft and sealed, this card is going to be a great pick for you and a big inclusion into a sealed pool. In standard, this card might be okay. I don't really know if this will see any kind of play at all. The 3 black mana does make me a little bit leery about it, especially in standard, but I think in draft and sealed, this card is really going to shine. Moving on here, we have Drudge Sentinel. This is a 3 mana 2/1 skeleton warrior. You can pay 3, tap Drudge Sentinel. It gains indestructible until end of turn. This is interesting because it's basically like a blocker that can gain indestructible by tapping it and giving it 3 mana. So block, then pay 3 colorless, then tap it, and then of course it gains indestructible. You can kind of not do this during attacks. Basically, that's all it's kind of trying to say here. I think this card is fine. I think it's better than paying 4 life like a Danto Vanguard here. So I think this card in a draft and seal pool is just fine. Not going to see any kind of play in standard though. Moving on here, we have the Eldest Reborn. Love the art on this piece right here. This piece is so beautiful. This is a 5 mana enchantment saga. Chapter 1, each opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. For 5 mana, it better do something good, and that's pretty decent. Chapter 2, each opponent discards a card. That's pretty decent, okay. Chapter 3, put target creature or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So actually 5 mana, 3 turns from now is amazing for us, especially if they sacrificed a planeswalker. We get that planeswalker on our side of the field. This card is really, really good, especially in sealed and limited. I think if the meta is as removal heavy as I think it is, this card in draft is also going to be a bomb as well. A great enchantment saga for black. I don't really know about standard. This card is kind of like a weird God Pharaoh's Gift style situation where you get to, like, you know, sacrifice something, discard their opponent's hand, and actually bring something back from their graveyard, which is interesting as well. I really like this card a lot. I think this will probably see some weird kitchen table or like brewing around for sure in standard. Moving on here, we have Eviscerate. Lovely name there. 4 mana sorcery. Destroy target creature. Very simple, very elegant and straightforward. Wish it was an instant for 4 mana, but of course, you can't have everything you want. I like this card. The art is just gruesome, and it's always going to be a high pick for us in black as well. Moving on here, we have Feral Abomination, a 6-mana 5/5 Thrall with Death Touch. This card is going to be like a huge bomb for you once you get into the black sealed pool in draft or sealed. In standard, you won't play this at all because it's a 6-mana 5/5 with like a 1 keyword thing. It doesn't really do that much. But in draft and sealed, this card is like a top-end bomb for you. It's just amazing. Moving on here, we have Final Parting, a 5-mana sorcery. Search your library for 2 cards, put one into your hand and the other into your library, or into your graveyard rather, then shuffle your library. So pick 2 cards, put one into your hand, the other into the graveyard, then shuffle your library. This is really, really good, I feel like, for a situation where you have anything that can come back from the graveyard, like the Enchantment Saga we just talked about, where you can kind of grab something back from the graveyard. I think this is interesting for that. I like the ability where you can just basically tutor 2 different things and put them in specific areas. I think that's really cool. I'm not so sure about this standard like application here. It is 5 mana, so it is quite a bit. If it was 4 mana, I feel like it might be a little bit better for us to use. But I do think being able to tutor for 1 card and put another card into the graveyard might have some use in standard, and I'm not just really thinking of it at the moment. I do think in Brawl, though, this card is quite good and might see play there. Moving on here, we have Fungal Infection. This is a 1 black mana instant. Target creature gets -1/-1 until end of turn. Create a 1/1 green Saproling creature token. This card is okay. It's a nice combat trick. And the best part about this card is it is actually kind of a flavor win, because it's like sucking off of like a piece of life from your opponent's creature, and then you get a creature out of it. That's pretty interesting as well. I'm not going to see any kind of standard play, but maybe in draft and seal as a weird like combat trick, and make sure that your board goes a little bit wider. Moving on here, we have Josuves Lich Knight. This is a 4-mana 4/5 legendary creature zombie knight with kicker for 6 with menace. When Josu Lich Knight enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create up to 8 2/2 black zombie knight creature tokens with menace. So if we have the mana, which is of course you see it's 10 mana, that's 6 and 4. That's 10 mana. 10 mana for 4/5 with menace. You get 8 2/2s. So if you want to go with the Golgari list here in standard, this is a guy I definitely wouldn't think you should go with. And this card is also a really great commander in Brawl too, and even commander regular. It's just ridiculous if you have the mana to pour into it. So I really do think a Golgari list is going to be built around this guy, and I can't wait to see that happen. I might even do that myself. This card is amazing. I really like this card a lot. If you get into it for draft and sealed, you know, a 4-mana 4/5 with menace is very, very good. And then a 4-mana 4/5 with menace that you can actually, you know, if you have the mana, pump 6 more mana into to make 8 2/2s, well, that's going to end the game for you. So this is a great bomb for you. Just ridiculous. A great flavor win as well. This card is so much fun. Moving on here, we have Kazaroth Singular, is it Singular? Singular Bloodline, Pure Blood, not Bloodline, Pure Blood. It's a 7-mana 4/4 legendary creature vampire with flying. Whenever a creature an opponent controls is dealt damage, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature right here. We can pay 4 mana, and it deals 2 damage to target creature. This is really interesting because, again, it's a really good bomb for us in draft and sealed. Not that great in standard, of course, because it's 7 mana. But if we have, you know, like kind of something where we can actually do damage to everything on the board, this is going to be a great card to actually grow really, really large. And it's a flyer as well. So if you're in the Rakdos build in draft and sealed, this card is going to be like your win condition that you're going to want to draw into. Moving up from here, we have the Knight of Malice. This is a 2-mana 2/2. There was that white knight. Now here's the black knight. This is a human knight with first strike and hexproof from white. And Knight of Malice gets +1/+0 as long as any player controls a white permanent. That includes you as well, of course. It's a 2/2 first striker that's hexproof from white. It's very, very good. I think this is a really good card against a lot of different formats right now. Specifically, though, draft and sealed, I think this card will probably be built around as well in a white-black like Knight deck and standard as well. I think this card is really good. I love the art too. I like that it's mirroring the white knight as well. This is just a really good card overall. I think this card is going to be a high pick, especially for an uncommon in draft and sealed. Moving on here, we have Lich's Mastery, a 6-mana legendary enchantment. Hexproof, you can't lose the game. Whenever you gain life, draw that many cards. Whenever you lose life, for each 1 life you lost, exile a permanent you control or a card from your hand or graveyard. When Lich's Mastery leaves the battlefield, you lose the game. What? This card is so random. This is like, I don't know. Basically, all I want to do is wait for Saffron Isle to make a build around this, because this is crazy. This is like what dreams are made of. It's so random. Like, I really like the idea of this card, but at the same time, it's like, what is happening? If it loses, okay, it's hexproof, so it can't be targeted. But if it leaves the battlefield from your own ability, you lose the game. But what? But you also can't lose the game. So if it's on the battlefield, so it's like, okay, well, that's interesting, you know. This just has Commander and Brawl written all over it. I think this card is really fun. For Standard and like Draft and Sealed, this card is very interesting and very weird. I feel like there's going to be people wanting to make this into a Standard deck. And I think this might be like kind of useful in a like Draft and Sealed deck if you get into it and have enough of mana, enough black mana to cast it. I think this card is super interesting. But as far as like, you know, being good, I don't really know if it's good or not. I think it's just really interesting. Moving on here, we have Lingering Phantom, a 6-mana 5/4 spirit. Whenever you cast a historic spell, you may pay 1 black. If you do, return Lingering Phantom from your graveyard to your hand. This card is super good for Draft and Sealed, especially because in Draft and Sealed, normally you only have so many copies of a specific card. Lingering Phantom here gives you lots of recursion for very little effort here, just casting an artifact or historic or legendary or whatever, and then paying 1 black mana. This card is very good at being able to be recurred back into the battlefield after your opponent has already wasted all their removal spells. So I think this card is amazing. It's especially really good because it's an uncommon, which means you might see multiples of these within a draft pool, as well as just card just being kind of decent overall, maybe even in a Brawl format. I don't think this card is good for Standard, but I do think maybe in a slower format like Brawl, it might see some play. I wish it had like maybe like flying or something, but a 5/4 is fine for 6, but a 5/4 you can get back, or for 6 for like, you know, every other turn, every time you cast a historic. I think that's very, very good. Moving on from this one here, we have Phyrexian Scriptures. This is a card that got early spoiled in Dominaria. This is a 4-mana enchantment saga. Chapter 1, put a +1/+1 counter on up to 1 target creature. That creature becomes an artifact in addition to its other types. Chapter 2, destroy non-artifact creatures, all non-artifact creatures, by the way. And Chapter 3, exile all cards from all opponents' graveyards. This is really interesting and very powerful because it means that we actually get to like hopefully kind of make into a construct tribal deck in Standard that actually can have a board wipe for 4 mana. I like this card a lot, and I do think that in Draft and Seal this will probably be a decent board wipe against your opponent. Moving on here, we have Rat Colony, a 2-mana 2/1 rat. Rat Colony gets +1/+0 for each other rat you control. A deck can have any number of cards named Rat Colony. You know I'm going to try and make a mono black Rat Colony deck in Standard. You know it's going to happen, just for the lulz. But for Draft and Seal, this means that you're going to have a lot of good situations to kind of continually pick into Rat Colony if it keeps getting passed to you. Kind of like with Legion Conquistador, except with this one, you can have, you know, multiples, and it becomes larger and larger and larger. And I think that's nice. It's a good inclusion here in this deck. I think it's going to be like or in this list here, I think it's going to be a nice, you know, mid to low pick for Draft and Sealed. Moving on here, we have Rite of Belzenlock. This is a 4-mana enchantment saga. Chapter 1 and 2 create create 2 0/1 black creature tokens, cleric creature tokens. Chapter 3, create a 6/6 black demon creature token with flying trample, and at the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice another creature. If you can't, this creature deals 6 damage to you. This card is super interesting. I think this card is actually very good as a rare in Draft and Sealed, and I also think this card might see some play in like a weird like hidden stockpile deck in Standard. It just kind of has that feel. I also love the art, of course. You know, the Seb McKinnon art on here is just fantastic, and if you guys haven't seen yet, the tokens for this piece here is also very, very nice too. So I think it's a really good card. You definitely want to get into it if you can. It's a rare, so you're probably just going to open into it, so pick into it. I think it's a very, very fun card, especially because it creates a bomb for you for just 4 mana. Moving on here, we have Settle the Score, a 4-mana sorcery. Exile target creature, put 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker you control. What? What? This card is so good for 4 mana. So basically, it's a removal spell in Draft and Limited. That's decent by itself because it's an exile trigger. But if you have a planeswalker on the battlefield, put 2 loyalty counters on a planeswalker you control. That is insane. For Standard, this card is very, very good. For Modern, this card might even actually see play because you can plus Liliana the Veil, use this, and then like Ultimate Liliana the Veil. So, what? This is insanity. I love this card a lot. This card is so good. If you get into it, you know, this might push you into black in Draft. It may not, though, because it is just a removal spell at the end of the day. If you don't get into a Planeswalker at all, it's just a removal spell. But, of course, in Standard and in Modern, this card is really going to see a ton of play, especially maybe even Commander, too. This card is just so much fun and so powerful to me. Moving on here, we have Soul Salvage. This is a 3-mana sorcery. Return up to 2 target creature cards from your graveyard to your hand. So there was quite a few of these in Rivals of Ixalan. I think they're okay. I think they're quite good. But of course, anytime I see these cards, I always just want to have like, you know, a creature or just a better like spell in my deck instead of getting spells and creatures that went to the graveyard already. So it's interesting. I like it a lot. It can get away around some good removal if our opponent has it. So I think it's good for that, especially grabbing 2 target creatures instead of just 1. So that's good for that. Moving up here, we have Stronghold Confessor, a 1 black mana 1/1 human cleric with kicker for 3 and menace. If Stronghold Confessor was kicked, it enters the battlefield with 2+1/+1 counters on it. So that turns into a 1 mana 1/1 with menace to a 4 mana 3/3 with menace. So it's interesting. I like that menace is on this card. I love the art on this card as well. The helmet there is really cool. But a 3/3 with menace for 4 is not bad either. So I think it could be a good like trade-off for paying the mana here. So I think this is probably one of the most like well-adjusted kicker costs in the actual set pool right here. So I think this is for a decent card or a decent first pick or a low pick for you in draft and sealed. Moving on here, we have Thaliad Omnivore. This is a 4 mana 3/3 fungus. Pay 1, sacrifice another creature. Thaliad Omnivore gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If a sapling was sacrificed this way, you gain 2 life. This card is really good and kind of pushes you into a Golgari list here for draft and sealed. And this is also another good card to pump into if you're wanting to build that deck in standard. I think this card has a lot of potential as well. It's not necessarily like a you know, like a sack outlet to a sack and make it just huge, because you have to pay 1 colorless here, so it's not as good as that, but you also have the upend or other like thing here of being able to gain 2 life as well. So I think this card is kind of like balancing itself out that way. Either way, I think this card is good in draft sealed, and probably will see some weird standard kitchen table brew. Moving on here, we have Thaliad Soothsayer. It's a 4 mana 2/3 fungus. You can pay 2, sacrifice a creature, and draw a card. Not sacrifice itself, just sacrifice a creature. So if you have a lot of tokens on the battlefield, this card will probably just give you a giant draw outlet for just 2 mana. And I think that's pretty decent as well. Again, this might see play in a weird hidden stockpile deck as well. For draft and sealed, it's a 4 mana 2/3, so that's a little on the low end for me, but being able to draw a card off this is just fine. Moving on here, we have Torgar Famine Incarnate. What are the words? It's an 8 mana 7/6 legendary creature avatar. As an additional cost to cast this spell, you may sacrifice any number of creatures. This spell costs 2 colorless less to cast for each creature sacrificed this way. So this means this can actually be coming out if we sacrifice 3 creatures and pay 2 mana, we get a 7/6 on that turn. That's really, really decent here. When it enters the battlefield, up to 1 target creature's life total becomes half of their starting life total, rounded down. This card is super flavorful, super good in draft and sealed, and might even see some weird standard play in like a hidden stockpile style deck. This card is amazing for me. I cannot wait to brew around this card for real. Moving on here from this, we have a Orgros, the Empty One. It's a 6 mana 4/3 legendary creature specter with flying. Whenever Orgros, the Empty One, deals combat damage to a player, that player discards a card at random. If that player can't, you draw a card. So I really like the ability here because it's actually kind of like rewarding an opponent or rewarding us against an opponent who was hellbent the entire game, which means hellbent means they don't have any cards in hand. So a 6 mana 4/3 flyer is decent in draft and sealed, but once it hits, you draw a card. That's very, very good. If you don't, they discard a card. Again, still really, really good. I think this is a great bomb for us in draft and sealed. For standard, it probably won't see any play, of course. If it was maybe 4 mana, it might see more play there. But for limited and draft and sealed, this card is quite good. Moving up here, we have Vicious Offering. This art is ridiculous. A 2 mana instant with kicker, sacrifice a creature. Target creature gets -2/-2 until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, that creature gets -5/-5 until end of turn. I really like this a lot. It's kind of bringing back like almost like the Morbid trigger from Innistrad. I like this card a lot for that. For draft and sealed, it's very good, especially at a common slot for a removal spell. And for standard and brawl and stuff like that, you won't see this at all. Moving on from this, we have Whisper the Blood Liturgist, or something like that. It's a 4 mana 2/2 legendary creature human cleric. We can tap it, sacrifice 2 creatures, return target creature card from your battlefield or from your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, this is another one of those cards where you can bring stuff back from the graveyard. Just graveyard recursion here is kind of a good set here, or a good theme within this set here. For draft and sealed, this is a very decent card to put into there if you have like a really good bomb that you want to make sure that survives or kind of like it can come back from the graveyard. I think this card is great for that. For standard, this won't see any kind of play. It's a little too slow for 4 mana, but I do think again in draft and sealed it's quite good. Moving up here, we have Windgrace Acolyte, a 5 mana 3/2 cat warrior with flying. When it enters the battlefield, put the top 3 cards of your library into your graveyard. You gain 3 life. This is interesting. Again, it's kind of a low pick for me as far as draft and sealed. This won't see any kind of play out of draft or sealed, but I do think otherwise a 5 mana 3/2 flyer is just like, you know, it's kind of like it's okay, and being able to gain 3 life, again, it's all right. It's not amazing, but if you can take it, you'll take it. Moving on here, we have Yargle Glutton of Urborg. This is a 5 mana 9/3 frog spirit. That's it. It's also legendary for some reason. Okay, it's very interesting. Not a big fan of this card personally. I mean, if you want to use this in standard, I guess use it with Fling or something like that. That's about all I can tell you. The 3 toughness here really does mean that if you pay 5 mana for a 9/3, it's going to trade with something really quickly and then just die. So that's kind of bad. I'm not that big of a fan of it because it doesn't have any kind of abilities. If it had maybe like Death Touch or Lifelink or even Menace or something like that, just anything rather, I would be happier with this card. But because it's just a 9/3, I'm not that hot on it. I think it's kind of silly. Moving up here, we have Yawgmoth's Vile Offering. I think this is the last card here. Let me see here. Yeah, it's the last card of the blacks here. This is a 5 mana legendary sorcery. First up, before we even talk about what it does, the art here, again, Noah Bradley, you knocked it out of the park. Amazing. Love this art here. Anyway, you can put up to 1 target creature card or planeswalker card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control, destroy up to 1 target creature or planeswalker, exile Yawgmoth's Vile Offering. For 5 mana, you get a creature or planeswalker from your graveyard back to the battlefield, and you can destroy a creature or planeswalker. That's ridiculous. This card is very pushed. I think this card is going to be maybe, again, a high pick for draft and sealed, obviously, as a rare. And I think it's probably going to see a lot of play, or a lot of tooling or deck teching or like sideboarding maybe in like a standard. I know this is probably see play in Brawl as well, but for standard this is very, very close to being like amazing. It's not quite Vraska's Contempt because Vraska's Contempt is 4 mana for an instant, so this card's a little slow, I will give it that, and it's actually 1 extra mana. But if you have the necessary requirements where you have a planeswalker in the graveyard or a creature you want to come back, and then they have a planeswalker on their side of the field, or a creature you want to die, then this card is just right up your alley. This card is perfect for that. But that is all of the black cards in the format right now. Let me know what you think in the comments down below. Did you like them? Do you hate them? Do you have any suggestions as far as like what kind of decks I should brew around next week? There are so many good decks right now for Dominaria that I can't pick one right now. I'm just kind of like scatterbrained. There's so many good cards to pick from. I do think this draft and limited like environment is really, really powerful. There are a lot of really good removal spells in black. To me, I feel like black right now has the best removal. That may change my mind once I get to red, but we'll see what happens for sure. But of course, like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and I will see you guys in the next Dominaria set review color.